Just your name and age. If you can say this, your name, Shinobi Chronicles. First your name.
Oh, Wendy.
Shinobi Chronicles. Chronicles, not Chronicles. Chronicles. It's 2 syllables. Shinobi Chronicles. There you go.
One more time with that. The last.
See, that's why there's a separation. I should have made it a little bigger.
Yeah, it's K-Y-A.
Okay,
Kia. See, when I eat food and then I say it, it sounds.
I know, last time I was like, it came just flying out of my mouth.
And then there's a little accent mark over the A, which means it goes up. Okay, Wendy.
Yeah.
How's your week going and what made you absolutely happy?
It's pretty good. And I like to go take medicines I live in Mount Pleasant, but I feel like you can still forage in an urban space, so I took and found just a lot of things. I have like about 5 little medicine bundles from last night, so that was nice. And it was a nice evening. Thank you. Oh, well.
There you go. And how's your week been?
So it was busy at work and I was waiting until today's class and the long weekend.
Okay. Vanessa Shinobi Chronicles. And I had a pretty good week. I had a meeting yesterday, and so we're having a ceremony on September 21st for Orange Shirt Day at Britannia. You're all welcome to come. And on September 30th, we're having another event called Giving Our Voices.
Swallow.
I had a good week today, finishing or doing the application for NITAP, that's the teaching program at TBC, getting references, etc. And I had a dance practice at Rainbow Creek, but not too many people showed up, so that was sad. But it was still fun to sing. And yeah, I'll be talking to my sister on the weekends, so I'm looking forward to that.
Wow.
I had a pretty good week. Got my battery fixed. Casing was cracked and they fixed it. I also got a new bike pump from China. It's a power pump, you know, instead of a hand pump. It's a OUA hand pump. Cheap. So it works great. It's the only way, right? Only way, I guess. The Chinese way of saying only way. Only way. What else did I do this week? My flight is booked for Ottawa, September 20th. So I'll be gone for 2 weeks. So I'll be seeing the kids for 1 weekend and then staying with Sonia for the rest of the time, seeing her folks in Moncton. I might even run into some high school friends. So, he used to be a best friend, but then he got married and moved to Moncton. Now I'll see him 30 years later. Maybe. Other than that, I had a good week.
Well, Collins and I interviewed the week started off a little bit different. I had to go back to work. I took off 3 weeks. It's the second time in 6 years I've taken time off. They had to chase me away. I'm always afraid they'll fire me when I'm not looking. But this last week, a number of things happened that I really appreciate it, I'll put it that way. My daughter wants to take a look at the things I've written, movie scripts, especially one of them. She wants to see if we can get it produced. And at one time I was taking acting lessons. There was Sam Bob, Curtis Henneque, and Dwayne Howard. Well, anyway, I went to see Curtis yesterday to ask him if they would start teaching those classes again, because I think a lot of the people I work with, you know, especially like the men, they could really use something like that. What they ask sometimes is there something inside that you've always wanted to say but have never said it? I worked with some actors. One was Jack Nicholson, and I'm not certain he's the one that said it, but asking them questions about what was the real attraction to their craft as actors. And the answer was essentially, I can do any damn thing I want and not be responsible for it. So the characters they play. So you can say all those things. It gives you an opportunity to look at your own character inside and create something out of it, a side of yourself you've never explored. And so anyway, they're starting, last night was their first class at Friendship Center, and in September they're going to be moving to Native Ed College, and it'll be on Thursday evenings, and as far as I know it's free and it's open to anybody that wants to go to these classes. And then Curtis asked if I had any short scripts that they could use, and we were using one of mine, and the young people that were in the class really liked it. It was a comedy called the Shinobi Chronicles, and it's really about two Cherokee guys who couldn't find girlfriends because they're related to everybody, and so they go to the old man Shinobi for advice, and he tells them, you stay away from them young gals. They're in an all-fired hurry to marry up. They marry up with you, then they spend 20 years trying to change you. Then they get mad because you're not the man they married. So, just getting into those lines, they had so much fun with it. One of my characters was actually a real person. His name was Lavoris. If any of you are old enough to remember, Lavoris was a mouthwash. This woman went into labor and she saw that commercial and loved that name, so named her daughter Lavoris. And so, just from the conversations I heard from different groups of women, I was able to construct a scene where these women are sitting around talking. And one says, you see no signs of Lavoris? And the granny says, hell, woman, ain't no woman ever been kicked out of bed because her thighs is too thick. But Elvira, she's so skinny, she's the insult to Indian women everywhere. So I had fun just writing those goofy things, you know. And we started using that as part of the class, you know. So each week I'd bring in a couple more pages, and then getting them to do monologues. And one teenage boy couldn't really get into any kind of emotions, and he wanted me to write him a monologue. So I wrote him one called The Chicken Killer. And the scene was, this is career day at a high school, and so he's part of a panel and they're talking about what they do in their careers. And he's just sitting there, not looking at anybody. And then when it's his turn, he says, chicken breast, chicken wings, chicken thighs. Everyone wants to eat chicken, but nobody ever asked, how did the chicken die? I'm a chicken killer. And so he starts going on about being a chicken killer, but sometimes I bite the heads off. Hey, you ever get a feather stuck in your throat? And he said he goes to the dentist because his teeth are getting dull. And the dentist started laughing. I bit him on the neck. But this kid got into that character, and he had so much fun with it. And that's what I like to see, is when people can get out of their zones, out of their comfort zone, and be a different character, even for a short time. But it's still you. You're not imitating anybody else. You're not trying to be somebody else or pretending this or pretending that. No. You're looking at yourself and just playing that character away, and asking these actors questions. What they really came up with is the difference between a good actor and a super great actor, we'll say it that way, are the choices they make, the choice of how they're going to play a character. So when you go in for an audition, the people running the audition assume you can act, but they want to know, what are you going to bring to this role? And so that's what they're looking for, is how do you read this character? What would you do with it? And so if we can get some people involved in that, because I ask often, how many of you have been beyond the Vancouver city limits? Very few have, unless they've come from another province. And many haven't even been out of BC. And yet our tribal imperative, I guess you might say, was to travel, to go out and meet other people. But I think part of it ended in 1620. The Five Nations people, every 6th year they would walk to Machika to visit their relatives. And I was talking to a guy at the elders gathering from Mexico City, from one of the indigenous tribes of that area, and he was trying to find his indigenous relatives in North America. So I told him about this meeting, and there was a man named Kotemak addressed the gathering. Kotemak was the nephew of a man named Montezuma. And this guy from Mexico said, look at my arms, the hair was sticking up on his arm. He said, that's my relatives. And he told them to go home and to stop traveling, because we know this thing's coming. And to take the things dearest to your heart, your games, those sorts of things, and put them in a secret place. Never sever your direct relationship with the power of the creating. And never give up your language, because that is where the knowledge is concealed. So they went home, and they didn't travel anymore, and they later became the Six Nations. One of the things that Leonard George wanted to do was to do a movie showing Aboriginal people running clear across the continent. They used to travel a lot. My grandfather, my Cherokee grandfather, used to take me to a reservation in Morongo by Palm Springs, and he told me that the men on that area could outrun horses. When the cavalry would be chasing them, they'd have to use relays of horses, because it wasn't they were that fast, but they could run for 100 miles and turn around and run back. And your Lakota people now, they were forest people before they got pushed out into the prairies, and they were runners. So we had people traveling all across the continent. On Haida Gwaii, they found pipestone that came from Minnesota. And so when you start looking at these things that we borrowed from each other, people knew when Columbus arrived. We got word. We knew what was happening. It wasn't everybody just sitting here on a reserve waiting for somebody to give us permission to leave.
Did he use any peyote to help him run?
Nope. Peyote was limited really down to Mexico. Peyote is a cactus.
Yeah.
And so,
You can
a lot of
high
times,
adrenaline, run real, just as fast as a horse.
Huh?
You can run just as fast or faster than a horse.
But they didn't have to use anything. They didn't have to use anything like that because it was just a natural thing. Because according to our history, what these old people were telling me is that when humans first started hunting animals, they didn't have the weapons like a bow or spear. What they do is they run them down, because we have one characteristic that no other animal has: sweating.
Oh, I was gonna say, we're persistent runners, and that's probably just as important as our opposable thumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the opposable thumb, but also, see, an animal will overheat and it'll collapse from heat exhaustion, whereas the human could keep running, and so they'd run down their prey. And so people stopped running when they got horses, and so they started depending upon somebody to transport
I
them.
think that's more important than having a thumb, right? Because if you could chase an animal down, then the rest is easy.
Yeah, yeah, a hell of a time hitchhiking.
Without it.
But yeah, just the ability to pick up some real tiny thing with this thumb that can.
But raccoons have that, and monkeys, like, I think it's our ability to run an animal down that put us up on the food chain.
I think it's a
that's.
thumb.
Yeah, but a lot of animals
Because we
have
can
that.
track
See-
those animals.
see, they can grip.
But we're not the
Track.
only ones with the
Yeah.
opposable thumb. Raccoons have it.
Mm-hmm.
Certain monkeys have it.
But they can't weed.
What, you never see any of them? You never see any of them hitchhiking, no?
Big rope.
Alright. Maybe running is more fun.
That's my
Yeah.
theory.
I've done a lot of it lately.
Well, in a city, there's only 3 reasons to run. The bus is coming, the bus is leaving, the cops are coming. Uh-oh, my ex is showing up. That's the 4th one. But anyway, last week I was telling you that we would discuss this ceremony of dancing under the paddle. And
And you were going to give us a dictionary,
what?
a little bit of a photocopy of a dictionary?
I took it home,
Oh,
because we'll do that next alphabet day next month.
oh, okay.
Because I only want to go over the alphabet once a month. We don't want to do it every class.
Uh-huh.
We want these stories that he's got.
Okay.
With other words in them that we need to know how to pronounce.
Okay, yeah, about the dance, I wanted to know what we should wear and how many of us there should be 13, we need to have 13 women.
Uh-huh.
Is it limited?
I don't know if I have any of those with me.
Like, what if we don't have 13 women, or we have too many women, but what is 13 all about?
What's that?
The 13 women?
Oh, no, well, I'll just go through the whole thing for you. It's all included in there. But we have to start sort of, I guess you'd say at the beginning. We don't, well, the people who were teaching me were told one of the things that they told me was we don't know the origin of all we call what's called creation. What we do know is that without light, nothing exists. If you're standing in a pitch dark room, if it exists, you can't see it. So it doesn't exist. And so it's said that loosely translated as the big spirit in the air. Air is invisible. So this manifestation exists nowhere, in nothing, and brought everything into light. And after it was brought into light, as it was intact, it had a sense that something was missing. Something was not in balance. So it manifested itself into a tangible form. The first one is intangible, and then there's the tangible. The Mayans also talk about this in a tangible and intangible form. The circle represents the intangible that's inside of a square, or the square is inside, it encompasses it, but that's tangible, something that can be felt, that can be sensed, maybe even measured. But we don't go that far to say it can be measured. This one is called Shunghanwai. Shunghanwai is a big spirit in the atmosphere. It's so big that it fills every corner of the universe and every fiber of my being. And it was said that this thing manifested itself into that tangible form and was, for lack of a better term, was seated on this thing, well, we can now call Earth. But even then, we're not sure that this is where it was. But some people doodle, and this thing was picking up handfuls of Earth, trying to discover what was out of sync, and became very saddened, and tears began to fall into that handful of Earth. And tears clear the mind, so those tears of sadness turned to tears of gladness, because it discovered what was missing. There was nothing in all of this that had the capacity to appreciate the beauty, the wonder, the magic, the majesty of all this that was brought into light, nor able to express that. And so this new one would be able to appreciate it and would be able to express it, not with so many words, as might say, as it is by how we behave. And instead of using the word creator, the way it was described to me was more like if you take something that already exists, say like a tree, and make it into a canoe, it has a different life. And so it took this handful of earth that was dampened with tears of sadness and tears of gladness, but by compressing it, it held its shape. So this one was to be transformed into another life force, life form. It was perfect, but it was female. I used the word but for those who believe otherwise. This first one was perfect. So the breath of life was put into it, sort of like CPRs. The only problem was nothing is made with only one side. So to separate it into two parts, and the second was male. And the only requirement to being human, to become human, is to be born of a woman. So when a woman gives birth to a child, the first sound coming from that child's mouth signals it's now in harmony with the universe. And we call that the woman's magic of harmony. So when we do this dancing under the paddle, the women dancing are the first women. They've not been abused. They've not had any terrible experiences. They're brand new. And the men dancing, they're brand new. The singers. They've not yet caused anybody any great pain or harm. But understanding their role, like if you see musk oxen, there's a threat, they form a circle, the calves in the center, the cows and the older ones, and then the young bulls on the outside. Buffalo do the same thing. With horses, the female is the one that really is the one that leads everything, but still, they wait for the male to be the protector. And so in this ceremony, the men make 4 promises. I'll always protect you, I'll always provide for you, I'll always walk alongside you, and I will never interfere in your search for your own special place. And this is the promise that was supposed to continue from the time we first came into light. Some people refer to women as the water carriers because of that fluid, that amniotic fluid that a new fetus is carried in. So that's what they're protecting the water, they're protecting the carrier. It doesn't have anything to do with gender. It has to do with each has their own special function. And so in this ceremony, we've selected the number 13 because our calendar has 13 months. There are 28 days in a month. 13 times 28 is 364. And there's one day left over, and that's the day when anything is possible. It was said this is when Eldana can receive a star-born or heaven-born spouse. Eldana is a no-name person, a person with no status, and sometimes called slave. And so when we take a look at our culture, and we look at what the Europeans brought to us, and like I said, you know, the word would cross the continent, so everybody knew what was going on. When those ones they called Puritans landed on the east coast of North America, the tribes were not certain of what these new ones might be because they were so different. Their mode of transportation, their clothing, their language, even their color was different. So they didn't reveal themselves, and watched for a month or so, and they couldn't understand why these new ones hated their women and children. They were so mean to them, abused them. It was getting toward fall time, and these new ones had not yet begun to put up food for winter. So this situation was discussed, and they decided that since they're so cruel to their women and children, that we're going to let them starve. We're not going to give them any assistance. But then the issue was raised that if we do that, then we'll be abusing the women and children. So they revealed their presence and kept these new ones alive all winter and into the spring. And word went out about these new ones, about how they treat their women and children. So for a long time, as they've been moving across the land, they began attacking that, first with their religion. This woman they called Eve. This place called Eden, I think, was an ancient Aramaic word for heaven. She caused man to be kicked out of heaven. So women had to be punished. They were the weaker, superior, inferior ones, whereas ours says almost exactly the opposite. So as they moved along, they attacked our language, because our language, for example, in Haida, we don't have gender pronouns. We don't have he, she, him, her. We don't even have I. It's this person rather than I or my. So we don't have that first person possessive either. And many of the other indigenous languages are like that. And so when we do this ceremony, my grandfather was the keeper of it, and I wasn't told how many times he did it, but I was told he did it once in 1940. But because of the law, it was against the law, it had to be done in secret. So he did it that one time. And then I didn't even know about it until 1982. When I got home from law school, my uncle Louis Kitcoon, my grandfather's younger brother, and my father, my mother, my dad's sister Esther Nix, Clara Natcom, Clara's husband was, his name was Clown Sanga, and he gave that name to my Uncle Louis, Clown Sanga. And then Louis' wife Alice was present, and that's when they told me that they were passing this to me. And so I asked, when am I supposed to do this? And they said, you'll know. And the more I thought about it, the more I didn't want to do it. Because I've seen what happens when guys get angry when they catch some guy being nice to women and children. They start giving you a hard time. Not everybody, but there's enough of that to where you kind of shy away from it. And then, I guess it was around 2010 or sometime around there, I had a dream about a pebble being dropped in a pond. And so I knew it was time. But even then I waffled here and there, and so we didn't get around to doing it until 2015. So this is more than just some sacred thing. No, it's a celebration. This is where you're supposed to be happy. I'm the first human female, and I'm going to find that place that's destined just for me, for this person. And the man comes out, this is the first woman. I'm going to protect her. I'm going to provide for her. I'm going to walk alongside her, and I'll step back so I never interfere in her search for her own special place. And so it has to be from that point of view that this isn't just for public show. It's for all of us. And also, we have to get rid of this notion of a human race, because race is a word that implies a contest to be number one. In Haida, we don't ask what race you are, we ask what's your nationality. Your nationality is your language. What language do you speak? What people are you? And so, also, color was never used for the purpose of classification of humans. It was used for identification. If this person is dark, that person is not, that person is red, that one's yellow, that one's brown. It's only for identification. I don't know how many of you have ever studied sociology, but in one of the books I read, that's been almost 50 years ago, 1971, I guess, 70, sometime around there, it was talked about there was an experiment with some students, the ones with blue eyes and the ones with brown eyes. And the brown eyes were a lower state than the blue eyes. And they really got into it. It was like Lord of the Flies as to how they began putting down the ones with the brown eyes, the ones with the blue eyes. So that's where color was used for classification rather than identification. So that's what we have to stop doing, is labeling each other and listening to the things that's happening in the environment. The huge fires that are going up in the Arctic. So you're getting considerably more carbon dioxide being released because it's been frozen at permafrost. So it means this thing's going to be accelerating. And to survive, as it was said in Haida, like the forest, the roots of our people are so intertwined that the greatest troubles cannot overcome us. So we have to start doing that again. We have to start looking out for each other, paying attention to what other people need. In the training for Haga, this person that is responsible for taking care of the mind, the body, the spirit, the soul, the beings. My uncle was telling me that when this person was going through the training, there's a stage in there at which sometimes that person will use that knowledge to hurt people, use that medicine in the wrong way. And we call that shtawa. Some people translate to English to meaning a witch. Why is it always the female that's bad? Why were women burned as witches? How many men were burned as warlocks? So again, we have to start changing our own personal views of ourselves. And so when this person became shtawa, my uncle told me, he said, but the person will get to a certain point where the power of goodness comes over that person, and that person can never again use that medicine to cause harm. We call that Gudangai Tana. That's a soft mind. Soft mind really means that this is where you care about another person's feelings, and you listen for those feelings as to how you're going to treat those people. Because see, when you grow up in a tribal society, everything is about body language. You can tell everything about a person the moment they walk out the door. I was listening to a lady from Africa talking about growing up in a village, and she was talking about those same things about privacy is really, how did she say, it's really I think of a mental illness. It's a psychosis, this thing of being alone, of being an individual and not caring, always looking out for number one. And yet that's what they taught in residential school. Because when everybody went to those schools, first thing is you trusted everybody. Because you grew up together, you shared with everybody. You help people. No matter what they're doing, whatever they wanted to be, you help them. And then the fourth thing was we learned to give back. But giving back doesn't mean I just take something and then give it back. But in residential school, they said, don't trust, they'll cheat you. Don't share it, they'll end up with more than you. Don't help anybody because the only way to the top is look out for number one. And don't give back because you can never have too much. There's a commercial on television that says, I want it now. I want it all. And that is the mentality, you can never have too much. So when we start helping each other, if you want to be the world's greatest carver, or you want to be the world's greatest whatever, people will help you. And if you fall, there's somebody to catch you. But if you go on your own, you fall. There's nobody to catch you. So again, that's what it's about again, is how do we survive this climate change? It's by helping each other. I spent about 8 years up in the subarctic and Arctic, 3 years in the Arctic. And we had to wear layers of gloves, because when you wear gloves, your fingers will freeze. But if you wear mittens, they probably won't, because the heat is helping each other, and that's what we have to again, like mittens. And so when we do this dancing under the paddle, it's really, in many ways, it's really quite simple. The women dancers are on the other side of the door. And so as they step through the door, that means that they're just now coming into being. Their first steps into the world. And so the leader calls out by name, Wendy, Hiatla, come out and dance. And so as the woman steps out and begins to dance, coming across the room, the man dancing with the paddle is dancing behind her with the paddle over her head. And one of the drummers from the line of drummers will move over alongside her. And so as they're dancing, he's up and he's mirroring her movements until they get so far into the room, then the leader calls out, Hoslavan, that's enough. And so the men move away, move back. Hugwa, You keep moving until you find your own special place. And there's no time limit. It's your choice. It's where you are looking for. You decide when you're going to stop. And then the man comes back and he gets back in the line with the drummers. And they call the next person by name to come out and dance. As she steps through, the man goes behind her. And one of the ones from here. What I was told is there was one man that during that time there were so many women that were dancing. They had all of them, I guess. That this man, they said, almost danced himself to death because he would not quit. He wouldn't give up the paddle either because that was his promise. And so each one as they come in until everybody is in. And this is when we begin to form the circle. If there's any children in the audience, the children will move out. The women will circle around them, the old ones around them, and then the men on the outside. The men are facing outward. The women are facing inward, facing the children, and the grandparents are facing inward also, because that's their job, is to protect that, and our job. And the way it was described to me was a man named Morris from Heidelberg. He said, when you're the head of a big family, it's like you're standing on a windy point. The wind and the waves and the rain is coming towards you. You have to anchor yourself like this. So whatever hits you won't knock you off your feet because you're anchored. And so when that big wave comes, you face it, you push it aside, but then you check to make sure everybody's still there. If somebody falls off, you can't go save them because you got to take care of all of them. So the next wave comes, it's too big. You let it roll over you. That means that I have to understand my own strengths. I have to know that if I'm trying to be, trying to act in a behavior of bravado. Oh, look how tough I am, I can face anything. You don't survive that. There's a strength is in here. It's not in the muscles or in a loud voice. So the man would dance this way, and he'd see that thing coming. Sometimes he'd push it away. And also, our dancing is different, is that when traveling to go somewhere for Oslau, or as in Chinook Potlatch, two canoes would be side by side, and they had planks that ran across the canoes. And a person would be standing in the center of it, dancing on it, while the canoes are moving. If you start jumping around like you do on the prairie, you're liable to jump overboard. so you didn't do that. And so, but in this one too, the women who are dancing, they should represent all those four colors. There should be the yellow, black, red, white. And I was asked what should they wear, and what my own impression is that the person dancing should wear something that's their own tradition, something, because they are representing all women of that color, we'll put it that way. And so it's not possible to have all the different, but whoever the dancers are, they'll be using whatever they want, whatever they think is theirs. And we'll also provide blankets. Have I left out anything so far, Todd?
How many blankets do we need?
Well, that's what 26. I've got a whole bunch of them. We can buy some more.
Yeah, we still have, we got some funds for that. That's why the work fees for the drums and the headbands.
What I'd like to do too is, I was looking at these stones, they're shaped like a heart. I'd like to get some of those just to give them as that symbol that people can carry with them. You can just stick in their purse and whatever, because it's theirs, it's your own medicine, it's not somebody else's. So that no matter whatever happens, you always know there's another heart near you.
There's a jade, amethyst.
What do you say about diamonds?
Rose quartz.
No, you have to speak a little louder. I'm what they call cute now. My ears don't work.
What about a heart of gold?
Well, if there's a heart of gold, there's somebody go digging holes for it. Somebody's gonna go digging it.
Yeah.
It'll turn into a diamond at some point.
Oh, here's what I'll give you copies. I'll give you copies of this. But each woman dancer must be aware that this is not about her, yet it is everything about her. She's the first woman. What is she bringing into the world? Anger, hurt, guilt, hate, etc.? No. For this brief moment, she brings the awareness of being human, the awareness of carrying not only the seeds of human survival, but also the mindset that will instill in us and those yet to come a sense of completeness, of happiness, trust, sharing, and a knowledge that all of creation are our relatives and not simply things. All humans share a beginning in common. None is superior. The men singers and dancers too. Each must leave his ego at the door, for this is not about him, yet it is everything about him. He represents the first man. He has an obligation as a human male to protect the ones carrying the seeds of our future. He has an absolute responsibility to protect, provide for, and to walk alongside with us through the world, often fraught with danger, and to ensure no one, including himself, interferes in her quest for her own special place in the universe. Each human is a unique creation and must be treated as such. The woman has feelings, hopes, aspirations, dreams, and as human deserves to be treated, and as human deserves to be treated as such. As she walks through this life, it is my responsibility to not interfere in her quest for her own special place and to ensure that others do not interfere. That which brought all things into being is beyond our understanding. So instead of worshiping it or trying to determine its essence or its plan, we live our lives with a certain knowledge that we are not in control. When we sing our songs, they are a form of prayer, for they are expressing our relationship with our relatives of the natural world. Each time a newborn child arrives and cries for the first time, it is the first human, a unique creation, and with that first cry, brings that one into harmony with the universe. Protect and nurture it, for each newborn is the first human, and our treatment of the new being will determine our human destiny. So that's it in a nutshell.
Will there be a food, a feast, before, after?
I've got a list of all the food we need somewhere in here. Anyway, I've got all the papers we had from 2015 as to what we were going to need, and about getting a screen that represents that doorway as the women come in to dance.
Is this room big enough
No.
for 26 people?
Oh, to practice?
Well, we don't want the whole, everyone, right? We're only going to invite 30.
Oh, we got to have room for the television cameras. I was going to talk to.
I don't have any. I didn't put that in the grant.
No, I was going to ask. What's his name? George. Let's play with. What's his name? Reuben. Yeah. I was going to ask him if maybe they could provide that space to us, because they'll be our host anyway, no matter where it's either gonna be them or the Musqueam or the Salish will be our hosts. And so we'll be pretty much following their protocols as to how we do things. The blanketing will be done by them.
Yeah, between those three nations, they'll have a cultural coordinator that'll, because I think they rotate the spaces.
They open up for opening the ceremony, closing the ceremony.
That sounds protocol to me.
Can we invite witnesses? What did you think?
You can have speak up, I can't hear.
Can we invite witnesses?
Yeah, well, see, what it said in our way too is that if nobody witnesses it, it didn't happen. And so what we did last time is we didn't provide seating. Because with everybody standing, they're a part of the ceremony. And so a lot of times when people get up to sing a song and everybody jumps up, they're really interfering in the ceremony. But they've learned that in residential school, that somebody's going to pray, whatever, they all jump up, they sing a song, they jump up. Used to be the only time you'd stand is if that's your clan song, or your crest, that there's, that song, then you would, to indicate who you are, that that's your song. But when everybody does it, nobody knows. So even the thing with applause, I used to wonder why that sounded funny when there was some guys from home drowned, a boat exploded and sank. And all the men were at the manse up there by the church. And us boys were always playing around. We could hear them in there, and I was wondering if they're playing dice or something, because you could hear kind of a rattling sound. I wasn't too sure what it was. But what it was when the first person finished speaking, whatever, they'd hit the table. They didn't do this. They said when you do this, you scare the good spirits out. So they would do this on that wooden table, because then it's calling it to you. But the other way, you're scaring them away. So there's lots of differences that we need to start looking at for our own reconciliation. We have to start reconciliation within ourselves. We have to start caring about each other again, because we can't get the rest of the world to change unless we do. I used to do a lot of environmental things involved in, I guess it's called the environmental movement, and there were quite a few young people that were involved. Most of them were non-native people, and so they would be talking about, you got to do this, you got to do that, and I said, well, do you talk to your family about it? No, I don't talk to them. So what's the point then, if you don't talk to your families? You're going to go out and change the whole world, but you can't go and talk to your parents or anybody about it. So again, this is where we have to learn to talk to each other again. And something else too is working with families is a baby, right from the very beginning, when it first becomes a person, cry. It begins imitating what it sees, what it hears. And so it doesn't matter what you tell the kids. If you're doing something like on your phone or texting all this, kids are going to copy it. You can beat them, you can do whatever you want, scream at them, preach to them, but it's learned behavior. They're going to keep doing it. And there's a very good reason for not doing it, at least according to what our cultural values are, is that when someone is speaking, if you interrupt, you cut that person's life. If you get up and walk out, you turn your back on them, you're insulting them and saying you have nothing of value that I want to hear. And so when you pick up that phone and start texting, you're not only interrupting, but you've also walked away. You turned your back. So it's a big insult. And so when we start seeing how pervasive all this is, I mean, I've been out there on my bike and I see somebody standing in the middle of the sidewalk with a stroller, little baby in there, just busily texting away, whatever we're doing. People having to walk around, somebody waiting to cross, partially going across the street and still. And so, I don't know if they realize what they're doing. But if kids see that, they're going to copy it. They're very good imitators. So that means we have to start paying attention to ourselves, and we have to start being good to ourselves. Just tell yourself, I'm a good person, I deserve good things, and start doing good things for yourself.
Don't hope, don't try.
Huh?
Don't hope, don't try.
Uh-huh.
Nothing will change.
Yeah. That's what Mike Dance used to say, don't try, do it.
When an infant is choking, you also start coughing in its face so that it can hopefully imitate what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
so that it can release whatever it's choking on.
Yeah, you know, even kids can tell, I mean, kids will read you very quickly. As there's somebody they want to be near them. I was sitting by a person who was kind of entertaining this small child in a stroller. And the child was really smiling and watching. And I went like this, and immediately it was scared. Because this was going on and I interrupted it. So they catch on to, and we men are very, very adept at that, of interrupting.
Well, my daughter tried to see if, I don't know, she's very perceptive, right, about sounding, right, so she tried quizzing us separately, see if we would, have different opinions. She said, you guys, it's just impossible, you talk the same about everything. And try to get Sonny to convince, let's do this, and then she says no, so she comes to ask me, and they say no, and how come you guys both think that way? So when they're thinking the same, they know it. When you're not, then they know who to ask for things that the other one would say no. They're very perceptive. Well, I wasn't. Weren't you as a kid? You ask your mom. She says no. So you ask dad. Sure.
So what do you ladies think about any of this, any part of it?
I wish I would have known that I would have started making my outfit ahead of time, because I think this is like a Métis style, so I could have put beads. So I'll make a black kind of shawl dress with floral beadwork, so it looks Métis.
Mm-hmm.
But if I would have known ahead of time, I could have been making my outfit.
I think we're going to do this more than once.
Oh, okay, so it'll keep getting better and better.
Uh-huh.
I like the idea of making my own regalia for this dance, because it's not like it's got to be a fancy shawl regalia
No,
or traditional regalia. It's going to be more like an urban
it's just,
Brazilian.
it's more about how you see the world and where your place is. Please don't wear your Supergirl costume.
Well, I think after 500 years of resistance, right, 500 years of death and destruction, we have a choice of what we want to do now, and this is one of them. This is taking back our ceremony, I think,
September 15th.
Just see if you can imagine what it must be like to step out knowing that all the baggage I carry with me isn't here. All the bad experience I've had, I haven't had them yet.
So we should smudge ourselves before it, or brush, or
No,
have a brushing before
we're
it?
not going to mix ceremonies.
No, okay.
No. This is See, what's happened with a lot of the smudging is that it's become kind of a religion. Because people are starting to see that you can use it for everything. It becomes, well, that's somebody else's practice. It's not mine. I mean, I've been around it just since the 1960s. And for me, it's not even really smudging, but it's just being thankful for water, just by washing my face with cold water in the morning. Because that's what we're doing, is we're really trying to maintain our relationship with the natural world. And my dad was a trapper, as were pretty much all the men in the village. And so I was learning to be a trapper too. And what they would do is what was called tanning the traps. Take a 50-gallon barrel and cut a whole big pile of spruce bark and put it in that barrel, and then fill it up about half full of fresh water, and then build a fire under it until it started boiling. Then they put those steel traps in there and let them soak as let the fire die down. Then they take out and hang it to dry. And so what it was is it took the smell of the metal off them, so they smell like the natural world. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is to fit ourselves back into that natural world. It isn't like getting a blessing like you hear from the church, you know. It's we're part of the natural world. You know, we were the last one to be brought along. We're sort of the Johnny come lately. So that thing in Haida that says life is like walking on the edge of a knife blade. If we're not careful and don't watch our step, we could slip and fall off the world. But what that really is saying is that we've been given ceremonies on how to maintain the balance. If we stop doing our ceremonies, we're going to fall off that knife edge and into chaos. And I was rather surprised when I saw the movie called Fiddler on the Roof, because it was so much the same thing. Life is like a fiddler on a roof, standing on a roof, trying to scrape out or scratch a little tune without slipping and breaking his neck. And so that's really the same thing as in Haida's walking on that knife blade. And so that knife blade really represents our cultural imperatives. That thing about drawing a straight line to the highest values and walking that line of avoiding causing other people discomfort.
Well, if when do you think we should do a few rehearsals so that we all have one mind and we know what to do in this ceremony? So so if somebody new comes in, we'll all be able to fill them in instead of just you.
At the very beginning, there'll be an explanation as to what it's really all about, so that, but if we have some new dancers or somebody that comes in, they're also going to have to get some instruction, because we don't want somebody that just steps in off the street.
No.
We want people that understand what they're doing.
That's why this is a class.
Yeah.
And
so we'll talk about it from time to time, and I do have some handout sheets here. I haven't had a chance to read through them, what I wrote in 2015. I've matured since then, I think. Why is it they say we never grow up? We grow out. Why do I have this comparative tax summary? I guess because I had to pay taxes.
Well, here it is, yeah.
What's that?
You owe a lot of money. Next thing.
I actually paid them off. Every year I pay $6,000. It's because of my pension in the States. They don't withhold anything because it's not taxable in the States. Then when it crosses the border, it takes a 25% jump because of the exchange rate, and then it gets taxed at about 25 or 26%.
That's half my wages in a year. Couldn't afford it, yeah. Couldn't live.
Maybe I should learn how to lie a little bit better.
I lost it.
Yeah, so if I sell a hat to the States, they're gonna tax me, or tax? No.
If you sell it in the States,
If I sell it here and then I ship it to the States, the person buying it is from the States.
it all depends on what you tell
Claim it
them.
under Canadian income and then you get it on Canadian.
Okay.
No, they don't claim it.
I don't know anything about.
I don't know anything about it.
Would you recommend paying for insurance when you're shipping something?
For a hat, I would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I've heard bad things about American mail service.
Yeah.
They steal things.
They went missing.
That's, yes, it goes missing, that's the only big area.
What do you mean?
Insurance, read both conditions.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe talk to other readers that have done it before too.
Yeah.
And they get charged for their postage and so on.
You charge,
You
that's
charge
what it's all about.
And you're insuring their money. And you're still gonna have it, they don't get it.
Yeah,
What's that?
they're gonna save a few $100 when I sell them a hat for Canadian dollars,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Everybody's,
they wanna buy from us.
that's,
Oh, one of the things I do here is when I go to buy something, if it's 100 or 200 or more than that, I have a credit card from the States, and so I pay in U.S. currency, and so it's about 25% cheaper. That's how I get to pay for my automobile repairs.
That's smart.
But if anybody asks and wants to know what this is about, it's really about how do we stop the violence against ourselves. Not, this isn't about stopping the violence against women, we'll put it that way. It's that we have to stop abusing ourselves, because what I'm doing is I'm acting out my hurt, and I'm causing other people pain. And so I have to stop beating up myself. I don't need to beat myself up. There's a lot of people out there willing to do it for me. So if I stop being the abuser, that can influence how these young people are that I work with. Because we have to be the model for them. I was reading a book, a guy named, I think it was David Gemmell, but and I'll post it on Facebook. It's called The Newborn. And in it he talks about the newborn is trying to determine its gender before it's born, and some don't, which causes a great deal of confusion. But it says when a child is first born, its whole universe explodes, because everything is new. There's nothing there they've seen before. So everything is learning to touch, learning to see, and so however we treat them, that's how they're going to be. I was down there on the corner of McDonald and Broadway today on my bike. There was a man and a woman, and this boy is probably about 10 years old. I could see he was upset about something, and he started walking away. And when his dad yelled at him, it really startled me because that voice was so loud and so aggressive when he yelled at the boy. Holy smoke. Because the boy's going to be just like him. So, again, it's how do we treat our children? How do we treat each other? I tell the guys it's not that important to be right. Because when mama's happy, everybody's happy. Anyway, so that's how I see these things, and I did bring some other stuff with me to hand out today. I guess it's over in my other medicine bag, the red one. Plastic. Did Todd escape?
He's coming back. Yeah, the event we're having on the 30th is about how do we stop violence, or how do we speak about the violence towards women and children, specifically. We're thinking of doing it through fashion, a fashion show with little dolls. And this thing is kind of like through fashion, but also dance, and so there just probably needs to be more ideas on how to do that. Yeah.
There's going to be one on the 30th, you say?
Yeah, on the 30th and the 24th. I'll post it too. I'll post it on
Okay.
tonight or tomorrow. Orange Shirt Day is the 24th, and that's the residential school survivors. And then the 30th is Giving Our Voices event. So, but we're just gonna start doing the fashion show for March. So March is the end game for our fashion show. And we have to have 3 events leading up to it. But anyways, we're kind of talking about the same thing, and we want to partner with other organizations like Strathcona, like probably this group, so you guys can come to our event. Maybe you do this dance at the event, since it's all about speaking against violence, because it's the same topic, you know? And we wanted to invite other groups to come and do their dance and, you know, share their community resources. But I'll put more online
Okay.
because it's down the road a little bit. I just had a meeting yesterday about it, so that's why I just hardly know anything.
That sounds pretty good. I think as we get more and more into these types of discussions.
Yeah, I just got involved, and Britannia got a grant for $10,000 to do this Giving Our Voices event. So we're supposed to do 3 workshops and 4 events. So we want to try to figure out how to get like Strathcona involved and Ray County involved, and women's groups involved.
Yeah, the more that we start talking about these things and start asking, what is my role in this? What part do I play that fosters that type of violence? Because it's very easy just to point at other people and say, they do this or they do that, when I say mean things. But a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing it. But when you start developing that soft mind and you watch the other person's reactions to what you're saying, sometimes we don't intend to hurt anybody, but we don't know that the other person might be carrying something that's a trigger. You can say something and trigger somebody else's feelings without realizing, but if you pay attention and you see it happening, then maybe you can deal with it, or ask, well, what happened? You know, I can see I hurt your feelings. Because I'm one of the ones that does this sort of thing a lot. I talk a lot, so there's always a possibility of saying something that's going to hurt somebody's feelings. And I'm not always aware of it because people don't always call me on it. But sometimes people call me on things without realizing, or I said something one time about being a half-breed, and one of the people in the session got very angry at me because there are some people that hear that as an insult to them. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you were... No, not me, I'm talking about other people. I said, well, I am a half-breed. I know what it means. I know what it feels like when people start calling you names. But you going around and trying to save everybody else from it, now you're hurting my feelings. So anyway, these were some of the ones that I put together that maybe, I don't know how many I have here. Todd doesn't need one, he knows everything.
I do. You put it on.
Here's 4, I think. Oh, here's one more. But this is really for, you need one more? This is really the teacher's, instructor's page, because it tells what to do. And this is, well, this has to do with conversation. More what I'm really interested in is that you pronounce the words right. If you don't, it just means you got to practice. On that first one, I don't have my watch, so I don't know what time, how close we are.
8:04. 8:04.
We can call it quits if you want, and do this next.
Stay here till breakfast. And we'll just go through this lesson 1 here on conversation. This is just when you're greeting someone, and the names they have here are Betty and Joe. Sinu Dung Hidam. Sinu Dung Hidam. Let's hear you repeat that. Sinu Dung Hidam. Hidam. Sinu Dung Hidam. Hidam. You just sort of tighten the muscles here. Hidam. Hidam. Yeah. Sinu Dung Hidam. And then she's saying, Sinu Dung Hidam, Joe. And Joe says, Di Lagen. That little mark in front of the L, that means that you hold the air in, tighten your abdomen, and then Lagen, you push it out. Lagen. Di Lagen. Di Lagen, Betty. Sinu Dung Hidam. And the way this is normally, regularly been translated was, how are you, Joe? And he says, I'm fine, Betty. And how are you? I mean, that's the way it's been translated. But, so if you notice this, the second where Betty says, decent lagen, whereas up there on Sinu, it has an accent mark over the A. That means your vocal inflection goes up, Sinu, because you're asking a question. Like, how are you? Whereas down here at the bottom, sin without the inflection means also. Die sin lagen. I'm also fine. It's pretty much the way it's always been. So Sinu Dung Hidam, Joe. It's here, Sinu Dung Hidam, Joe. Sinu dum hidum to. Sinu dum hidum to. Then di lagen, not gum, lagen, di lagen, Betty. Sinu dung hidum. And how are you? And Betty says, decent lagen. I'm also fine.
Did anybody bring a memory stick with all these words from Woody? So I can copy them to
That'd be a good idea.
and you'll repeat this over and over at home or on your phone. I'll bring my laptop next week if I don't have a computer, and then I'll just transfer to your phone.
And then these are just some vocabulary words like hill, that X-I-L, hill. Hill is a needle on a hemlock tree. It's a pine needle, but it's also a term for medicine. And tzur, that A is pronounced like the U in Sun. What?
For that medicine word, that would work really well with an induction, because it's one syllable, like sleep, or heal.
Hill. Okay.
It's quick.
He keeps trying to hypnotize me. I'm not too sure. I mean, this is reality now. He might have gotten to me. So it can be a sinker, a pillow, or a bull pine. That's a tree that grows in a muskeg. Huh?
How do you pronounce sinker pillow? Sal?
Tsahl. T-S-A-H-L.
No, but how do you pronounce?
Tsahl.
Su.
Put your tongue up here.
Su.
Tsa.
Su.
It's like you're spitting. No, it's like the U in Sun. Not ah.
Don't look at the
Well,
words.
that's the first part, then
He's
after
like
that-
this. Get your hand in your mouth so she can see you.
Well, anyway, and then for animals, sow. The double A is pronounced like the A in father. Sow. Sow or hooligan. Hooligan is a Niska word. The Europeans call it candlefish because you could actually light them and burn them. Then the word kun. Kun is not only a whale, but it's your nose. It's a point of land. It's something that juts out in front. And gujao. Gujao, it really means its head is flat. Gujao for a drum. And then gya'am. That means your history is standing straight up. That's a totem. And then I'm supposed to find out this information for you so we can fill out the rest of it on the back of the second page. That's where you begin with your name. Hinu di Kya'am. This is the way this person is called, because it isn't a name, it's a description of your character. Sinu dam Kya'am. And then when you refer to yourself, that's what you say, it's Hinu di Kya'am. And then if you're asking somebody else how they're called, Sinu dam Kya'am. Sinu dam Kya'am. How are you called? Sinu how Kya'am. Instead of saying how is she or how is he called, how is that person called? Sinu hal, it's pronounced with like a U instead of an A. Hal. If you take a look at that alphabet, see if you can use that alphabet to get the sounds of the words, like the W is like the double O in moon, oo. Hin, oo. Hin, oo. And then the double I is like an E, D, kya. Kya, that A is like the U in son,
Yeah.
and the double A is Ah, father. Hinu di kya ang. Hinu di kya ang. Sinu, sinu, see that A has a mark about sinu, sinu. So there's a rhythm, it's sinu, sinu, dung kya ang. Sinu dung kya ang. Sinu dung kya ang. So it's starting to learn the rhythm. So anyway, do what you can with it. If you can speak it into your recorder on your phone, see what you sound like when you say it. And then next week we can go by and go through and then go through it again, so then you can do it again and again.
We're
Start
not here
learning.
next week?
Huh?
Are we here next week?
When are we here again, Todd?
August 11th,
August
Sunday.
11th,
Okay,
10 a.m.
so not,
Sinu, 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 sinu and hinu.
So,
I had a brother-in-law that would say kinu or canoe. Kinu. He was Dene.